My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 32 and I'm an accountant in Havenwood, a small upstate town. Life here is pretty slow and predictable. Everyone knows everyone. My job, which felt important, was handling the numbers for the local farmers and businesses, sort of like the guy who kept their money straight. Every day, my routine was pretty set. Almost always the same thing. I'd wake up to the sun hitting the window and drink my strong coffee, smelling the morning dew outside. Then I'd go to the office, a simple room facing the town square, and spend hours organizing spreadsheets and checking client balances. At the end of the day, when the sun started to set, I'd head back to my house, which was really quiet. I'd eat something simple and read a book, traveling to other worlds, a way to escape my predictable life before bed. The cycle repeated, always the same, and that gave me a certain comfort. But sometimes it also made me feel a bit sad. My routine was stable, but behind all that predictability, there was a hole, an emptiness that sometimes got too big for me to ignore. At night, the quiet of the house made everything seem bigger, the lack of noise, and especially the lack of someone else. I'd see neighbors, families in the town square, kids running around, couples holding hands, and me, alone, with my book or staring at the ceiling. It wasn't envy, but a sharp pang. Something important was missing in my life. My routine, which used to give me some comfort, now felt like a prison. The loneliness didn't scream, it just hummed. It was a constant hum, reminding me I was by myself. I really wanted someone to share the small things with. Breakfast, a smile after a tiring day, or talking about a book. It wasn't just about sex. It was companionship, a real connection, you know? I used to imagine having someone who got me, laughed at my jokes, who was just there. That desire grew, turned into a physical need, like hunger. I missed something I never had, but saw everywhere. That emptiness started to weigh too much. It was a quiet, constant weight, pushing me to find a way to fill that space. The loneliness squeezed, and I started trying everything. I downloaded dating apps. The conversations were superficial, like, "Hey, how are you?" It felt like I was filling out a form, not really getting to know someone. The dates went nowhere. There was no connection. I'd come home with a heavy feeling in my chest, like I'd failed again. I tried groups, book clubs, cooking classes. The idea was to meet new, real people. But everything was superficial. People were polite, they'd smile, but there was no interest in going beyond "How was your day?" I'd talk, I'd listen, but I felt invisible. The doubt that I'd ever find someone real just kept growing. Every try chipped away at my hope. At first, I had this energy, like this is it, but frustration just turned into exhaustion. It was just too tiring, trying and getting nowhere. Love, what I dreamed of, felt like a mirage, always close, but vanishing when I reached for it. The loneliness, which used to just hum, was now a silent scream inside me. I was desperate, totally lost on what to do. After trying everything, and with the loneliness just getting worse, I started looking elsewhere. When the normal stuff ran out, my mind went to some strange places. I dove into the old Havenwood legends, stories I'd heard since I was a kid, but never really bought into. Lost loves, reunions after death, and rituals that promised to bring you the right person. I was just desperately looking for any tiny bit of hope. The old, Out-of-the-way cemetery, whispering pines, it was kind of peaceful. I started visiting it, not because I was into morbid stuff, but because there were so many stories there. Intense lives and loves that lasted forever. I walked among the graves, reading dates and names, thinking about the lives and loves left behind. This weird feeling came over me, almost peaceful, and the strange kind of curiosity. Did they connect in a way I never could? I started thinking maybe there was a different way to find what I was looking for, something I just didn't get yet. My routine, which used to ground me, now just felt like a weight I couldn't carry anymore. Every day was the same coffee, the same endless numbers at Miller Accounting Services, an emptiness screaming on the way home. Loneliness wasn't a distant buzz anymore. It was a scream caught in my throat, choking me with every breath. I'd look at the gravestones at Whispering Pines, the love stories carved in stone, and think, am I the only one who doesn't deserve this? The search for perfect love, which always messed me up, started blending with those old legends the older folks used to whisper about. I was just so exhausted from trying, from failing, from being alone, from being invisible. The cemetery, which used to have this weird peace, turned into a map for something uncertain. But it promised a way out. I wanted a shortcut, a quick fix, something to yank me out of that boring cycle of despair and frustration. It was there, among the dead and their memories, that the ritual idea, which felt silly and childish before, started to make a terrifying kind of sense. I just wanted to feel something real, a genuine connection, even if it came from a place I'd never imagined. After I left the antique locket with the withered white rose on Seraphina's tomb, I went home with this silly kind of relief, hoping I wouldn't be alone anymore. Then she started showing up in my dreams. First a perfect, distant image. Each night, more real, closer. The dream turned into a nightmare when, one day, she was just there, in my living room, dressed as a bride, like she'd always lived there, and she wasn't leaving. At first, the dreams were wonderful. She was just like I'd imagined, smiling, talking. I'd wake up feeling good, like the loneliness was easing off. But soon, things changed. She'd talk about our wedding, our home. The voice in the dreams sounded so real that I swore someone was actually in the room with me. Doubt started eating at me. Was I losing my mind? One night, I woke up in a cold sweat. I felt her cold presence at the foot of my bed, that smell of withered funeral flowers. A chilling fear grabbed me. I tried to convince myself it was just in my head, just my desperation for someone. But it was different. Her presence was too strong to be imagination. Then, it happened. I opened my eyes. She was there, real, standing in my living room, in her white dress, eyes fixed on me. My heart pounded. I couldn't breathe. My home, my safe place, wasn't mine anymore. She smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and said, "My groom, you took too long." I tried to speak, but no voice came out. She was convinced, and I was trapped. That desperate hope for love turned into a trauma, a prison I'd created myself. Loneliness now was the least of my worries. After the ritual, she started showing up in my dreams. That first time was unlike anything else. I lay down exhausted, but with that foolish hope you get when you've done something stupid. In my sleep, she came. It wasn't just any dream. It felt like I was wide awake, but inside a movie. She was there, beautiful, dressed as a bride, with a veil light as smoke. She was the perfect bride, the woman I'd always imagined and wanted so much to find. She smiled at me, a smile that seemed to hug me, to fill that huge hole I'd felt in my chest for years. Every detail was clear. The way the light hit her face, the sparkle in her eyes, her hands outstretched towards me, as if calling. I felt something, an instant connection, like we'd known each other forever. It was the love I'd always dreamed of, right there, in front of me, in my head. I woke up with my heart pounding, kind of happy, kind of sad, because it was just a dream. But man, a seed had been planted. For the first time in a long time, the loneliness didn't feel so heavy. I had the sweet memory of that face, and it gave me a strange relief. I didn't know it then, but it was the beginning of everything. The start of the nightmare, which felt like a gift. After that first time, the dreams with her became routine. It was every night. They were more and more real, not just pretty pictures. She spoke to me, Ethan, whispered things in my ear, promises of eternal love, of a future for us. The conversations were so clear that when I woke up, it took me a few seconds to understand I was in my room, alone. Her voice still stayed in my head. At first, I loved it. It was what I wanted, someone to pull me out of loneliness. But then, things started to shift. She looked at me differently in the dreams, a gaze that felt like it was trying to trap me, hold me down. I tried to look away, but it was useless. And she always called me my groom. In the beginning, it felt so good, so right. But over time, that word started to feel heavy. It wasn't a term of endearment anymore. It felt like a demand, like I belonged to her. I still really wanted those nightly visits, no lie. But with that wanting came a growing unease, a strange knot in my chest. It was like I was losing control of something really important. The line between what was a dream and what was real just faded away. I couldn't tell where one started and the other ended anymore. What was supposed to be a romance, something light, turned into a knot I couldn't undo, something I couldn't avoid, and that gave me the creeps. I felt like I was being pulled into something I'd called myself, but wasn't mine anymore. The line between dream and reality was already blurry, but the invasion started bleeding non-stop into my everyday life. At work, at my accountant's desk at Miller Accounting Services, a familiar smell would creep in. Old funeral flowers and damp earth. The same smell from the dreams whenever she was close. It just came from nowhere, from the air. I thought it was the Whispering Pines cemetery smell because of the ritual, but it just hung there, giving me chills down my neck. It got more frequent, almost every day. Not just the smell. Out of the corner of my eye while I was typing, I'd see a shadow, a nearly transparent white veil that disappear with the slightest move. I figured it was tiredness or the light. I don't know, but my heart always pounded. At home, the feeling of not being alone became constant. A weight, like someone was watching me from afar. Not knowing what was happening was hell. At work, my mind would drift, searching for the smell, the shadow, her presence. The loneliness I hated was replaced by a company that scared the hell out of me. Trapped in the trap I created myself, with every smell, every glimpse, every shiver. I felt her closer. A slow, silent invasion, but it never stopped. One morning, my favorite romance novel, which I'd left closed in my bedroom, was open on the kitchen table. A small detail, but forgetfulness didn't make sense as an explanation. It felt weird. That night, a whisper called my name from the hallway. It was a familiar female voice, but it shouldn't have been there, and that was way more terrifying. My heart hammered. It wasn't just old house noises or the wind. It was a soft sound, almost impossible to hear. But it was so clear, it made me freeze. Ethan? It sounded close, but nobody was there. I got up fast, turned on the bedroom and hallway lights, checked all the rooms, kitchen, living room, bathroom. Nothing. The silence came back, heavier and scarier. The fear, which used to just be an uncomfortable feeling, became a tightening knot in my throat. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, a shiver that wasn't from the cold. It was like she was toying with me, testing me, showing she could be anywhere at any time. Not knowing what would happen next was horrible. I tried to breathe, but the air felt heavy. I lay down, but I couldn't close my eyes. I just stared at the dark ceiling, feeling every heartbeat. The loneliness I used to dread had been replaced by a silent, constant invasion that stole my sleep and my peace. I was trapped. Every single thing that happened just underlined it. I couldn't pretend anymore that everything was okay. Those dreams, the smell of old funeral flowers, the shadows I was seeing, the book that moved, and now, the whisper calling my name. None of it was a coincidence. My brain couldn't make excuses for myself anymore. Trying to find a logical explanation was pointless. It just made me feel like an idiot. My house, which used to be my safe place, turned into somewhere I walked on eggshells. The loneliness from before was bad, but this was worse. I wasn't alone, but nobody else knew. It was a loneliness with a presence I didn't want, one I had brought on myself. What seemed like love and an answer to my emptiness was turning into something sinister. It wasn't full-blown panic, but a physical discomfort that just wouldn't go away. Something really important had changed forever, with no turning back. I tried to keep my routine, but my head wouldn't stop, always looking for something strange. Every shadow, every noise became a trigger, making me whip around quickly, expecting to see the white veil, just for a second. One night, while I was reading, the smell of old funeral flowers filled the air. And when I looked up, she wasn't a shadow anymore. She was really there, standing in my living room. It wasn't a dream, or just being tired. It was her, standing there. In the wedding dress, the same one from my dreams, the veil covering her face. But I knew those were the eyes that haunted me. My heart pounded, felt like it would rip right through my chest. My breath caught. The air got heavy, icy cold, even with the window closed. I could only stare at her, completely paralyzed, silent, still, like she'd stepped right out of an old photo. The white dress, which looked otherworldly in my dreams, was real now. Heavy fabric, dusty and white. The veil, which had seemed light before, now dense, covered her face. But I could make out the outline of a familiar smile, a smile that once had given me hope, and now only fear. My throat went dry. I tried to speak, but nothing came out, not even a whisper. My body froze. I was completely paralyzed. I only felt the cold coming from her, not from the room, but from inside her, reaching out to me. The loneliness I had felt before, the one that led me to the ritual, now seemed like a luxury. I was alone, yes, but with company 1,000 times worse. She took slow, quiet steps. It felt like she was floating. Every step was like a hammer hitting my head. She stopped right in front of me. That smell of withered flowers, the one I couldn't stand anymore. It almost choked me. Then she slowly lifted her hand, and the veil came up. Her eyes, the same ones from my dreams, wide open, just fixed on me. They weren't the eyes of a living person. Deep, dark, with a shine that wasn't human. And that smile, the one that promised love. She didn't say anything, but her gaze said it all. They said, "You're mine." They said, "I came to get you." I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. Stuck right there, on my couch, in my house, with the thing my desperation had created. The doubt was gone. Now it was too real. The trauma was just starting. I had invoked something uncontrollable, and she was there to collect. I tried to get up from the couch. I swear I did. My muscles wouldn't respond. It was like I was glued there, a statue of flesh and bone. She just kept looking at me, not blinking. And that smile, it wasn't from someone who loved. It was from someone who possessed. The living room, which was my safe place, turned into a cell. I looked at the door, at the window, but it felt like an invisible wall had gone up. I couldn't go. I couldn't escape. The first thing I thought about was my phone. It was on the coffee table, just an arm's length away. If I could grab it, call someone, anyone. But it felt like my arms weighed tons. She didn't move, just watched me. And with every second, the feeling of being watched, of being trapped, got stronger. It was a fear that didn't come from a direct physical threat, but from the certainty that I had no control over anything anymore. I managed to move a finger, then my hand, really slowly. She didn't react. Her gaze was constant. It went right through me. I grabbed the phone. The screen lit up. The faint light seemed like a lighthouse in the darkness that surrounded me. My mind screamed at me to dial 911, to call a friend, anyone who could get me out of there. But what would I say? There's a ghost bride in my living room that I summoned and she won't leave? Nobody would believe it. I sounded crazy even to myself. The loneliness hit me again, but in a different way. It wasn't the loneliness of not having someone, but the loneliness of being alone against something no one else would see, no one else would understand. I was trapped, not by chains, but by a reality only I lived. The front door was right there, just a few feet away, but it felt like it was on the other side of the world. It was like the air around it was thick, impossible to cross. I was in my house, but it felt like I was in a coffin. The lack of help was deafening. With my phone in hand, just a useless, cold weight. I was totally frozen. Help felt like a deafening silence. A far-off echo in a reality that just didn't make any sense. Then she moved and spoke. Her voice, cold like ice cracking, seemed to come from somewhere deep, just a few feet away. Each word a dry hit against the silence that was crushing me. "My groom," she said, her voice dragging. "You finally came. I've waited so long." My body just clenched up. a spasm of pure fear. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't be real. My mind screamed no, but her voice? That cold, I could barely breathe. The air felt thick and heavy. There was no way out. Reality hit me with this brutal force. She moved closer. That rotten smell of dead flowers. Our vows echoed in my head. They're eternal. We promised. It goes beyond life and death. I didn't promise any of that. I just wanted real love, real affection, not this cold nightmare standing right in front of me. She ignored my crazy thoughts, my desperation and disgust. Her dark, lifeless eyes held me with an intensity that wasn't normal, reading every piece of my soul, but ignoring everything that didn't fit her madness. I was an open book, but she only read the pages she cared about. Our love, she said, the word feeling empty. It's forever. Death can't separate us now, can it? Our union doesn't care about the end. A cold shiver went down my spine. Death couldn't separate us. She was death, or something worse, messing with life. Her love was a curse I couldn't escape, a never-ending prison. I was screwed. She reached out her pale, kind of transparent hand. I didn't want her to touch me, but I was frozen, like a puppet in her hands. My muscles were just locked up from all the fear. "We're getting married," she whispered, her voice colder than ice. "At the cemetery, where it all began, where our love blossomed." The cemetery. There, in my innocence, not knowing what I was doing, I did the forbidden ritual. She wasn't asking, just telling me. No choice, no escape. Loneliness pushed me, and now it was my company. She was invading my life, my soul. A forced vow. I was the groom, with no way out. The horror was starting. I'd called forth my executioner, and now she was calling me groom, trapped in a yes I never said. She turned her back, slowly, and started gliding across the room. With every move, that smell of dead flowers got stronger, clinging to everything. She was marking territory, making my house. The dust on her dress was old, from a tomb. No sound, just the muffled thud of my own heart. The light in the room got weaker, gray. The shadows in the corners grew thicker, like the darkness was coming alive, spreading out from her. The walls, which used to feel safe, were now cold, damp, like a basement. It wasn't just her invading. The whole house was being invaded, turning into a piece of the cemetery. My things, photos, all felt strange, out of place. The house transformed, bending to her. Windows, once my view, were dark mirrors reflecting prison. The air was heavy, not just her smell, but her presence. My home became a tomb. I was next to be buried in it. Each step she took, the house whispered, conspiring. Walls and floor felt it. This was a scary dance, but I was no dancer, just the victim. The house, a silent accomplice, watched, no escape. My safe place became a trap. My old dreaded loneliness was now my only wish. Escape her and this place. She touched the window glass. Faint daylight died, swallowing clarity, darkening the room. Night's cold brought an intense smell. Old funeral flowers, damp earth, something rotten, ancient, a suffocating smell, like the cemetery was settling into every house corner. Not a love song, but a deep lament, a slow death march. Her freezing whisper filled the room, trapping me. It was the funeral march. I knew with cold certainty. The march to my wedding, a forced union with emptiness. I watched the candles, her face a wax mask in dim light. My whole being screamed. Uncertainty became a crushing certainty. She was preparing me for a terrifying ritual. Loneliness, my treacherous companion, was the sole witness to my end. I was led to the altar, not for life, but a death in life, an eternal union with nothing. Each note of that scary song deepened the trauma. The cold wasn't just air, it was inside me, ice climbing from stomach to chest, squeezing everything. My lungs felt crushed, breath stolen. Every heartbeat hurt, a dull, scared drum echoing. I had a knot in my throat, not from crying, but pure despair, a helplessness choking me, you know? My mind raced, trying to find a way out, a way to wake up from this nightmare. But it wasn't a dream. It was real. And the reality was I was stuck there, trapped, watching my own damnation, my own end. Her melody, a whisper of death, a warning, was the soundtrack to the end of my life as I knew it. I thought about my house, my stuff, my dumb routine, and it all felt so distant, so lost. It was like watching my life slip away, like sand through my fingers. Freedom, the simple idea of being able to leave, to choose what to do, to not have that empty stare following me. All of it became a luxury I couldn't have. A sigh, a last one that I couldn't even really let out, caught in my throat. I just wanted to scream, to yell no, that I didn't want any of this, that I wasn't her groom. But the voice wouldn't come. She kept singing, and with each note, the feeling of being dragged into a bottomless pit got stronger. The candles on the small table, with their faint light, seemed to illuminate the way to a point of no return. I looked at them, at her face, and felt a cold in my soul. It wasn't just fear, it was a really deep sadness, knowing I had dug my own grave with the shovel of loneliness and naivety, you know? The yes she expected, that she already took for granted, was the death of my will. It was the end of who I was. I had no choice, no voice, no way to fight. It was a tightness in my chest that wasn't just physical. It was my soul twisting, refusing to accept what was inevitable, but being forced into it. I was just there, a groom without consent, waiting for the moment to be led to the terrifying altar I had created myself. Loneliness brought me to her, and now she was taking me forever. Her chilling lament was breaking me. I waited there for the end, my soul twisting. Suddenly, a dry boom, like a transformer blowing, and everything went out. The house plunged into total darkness, a silence that swallowed her singing mid-note, as if cut off. So fast, so unexpected, my body jumped on the couch from pure shock. The darkness, dense and suffocating, blinded me. I couldn't see anything, not even the useless candles. But her silence, her voice cut off, was what shocked me most. Her absence was a sound. I felt her presence waver, like a flame almost going out. Her coldness, which had pierced me before, spread out into the darkness, losing its power without the light. Then, The paralysis that held me to the couch broke. It wasn't instant liberation, but my muscles relaxed, giving way to a shiver of urgency that I needed to act. A now or never hit me. My heart, which had been beating with dread, hammered with a new energy, fear, and a tiny bit of hope. The darkness, which was terror before, became a shield, a chance. I had to move, fast, before she could recover, and the darkness became my new trap. I threw myself off the couch, stumbling in the pitch black. My legs were still really numb, but panic was pushing me. I couldn't see anything, just total darkness. A strong smell of old funeral flowers and damp earth, like from a cemetery, got stronger. She felt stuck to me, breathing on my neck, led by my desperation. I dragged myself across the living room, bumping blindly into everything. Coffee table, bookshelf, knocking over magazines. Every touch was a jolt, a flash of where I was without seeing anything. Her coldness, the same as before, brushed my skin, an icy breeze that was everywhere. It was like she was the cold air itself, wrapped around me. Groom, the whisper came from everywhere, echoing in my head. It was her voice, cold, possessive. It made my hair stand on end. The sound was pure terror, but the darkness keeping me from seeing her face, her white dress, for a brief second, felt like a disguised blessing, a relief. I just wanted to get out of there. I threw myself toward what I thought was the hallway, heading for the front door, anywhere away from her. Adrenaline was pumping, but my legs felt heavy, exhausted from being paralyzed. They kept giving out, but the fear was an engine that wouldn't quit, pushing me. I didn't know where, just that I had to get away, vanish from there. My hand shook on the doorknob. I forced it. A dry click. The door opened. A sliver of moonlight and starlight came in. Weak, almost useless. Barely enough to see the street. Empty. Completely. Not a soul, car, or light on in the neighbors' houses in Havenwood. The night air hit me. It was cold, but not her cold. The kind that chilled your bones. It brought me no relief at all. The loneliness I always hated, the one that made me pull that stupid stunt at Whispering Pine Cemetery, now swallowed me whole in a much worse way. Nobody to see, hear, or believe. I was alone, given up, with no way out. The street wasn't an escape. It was just another place for me to feel trapped, knowing I had nowhere to go. She wasn't right there in front of me, but I felt her stuck to me, on my skin, in my head. A shadow following me, no matter where I went. The threat wasn't just the house, it was my entire life. I wasn't going to get rid of her. That was it. I had just jumped out of the frying pan and straight into the fire. I slammed the front door shut, the sound echoing through the dark house. I just couldn't stay outside, alone, a target for anything. My body just moved, pushing me to the bathroom. It's the smallest room, you know? Seemed like the only place I could hide. I threw myself against the door, sliding to the cold floor. Huddled there, all I could hear was my heavy breathing and my heart pounding, like a drum inside my chest. The silence in the house was worse than her screams. It was a silence that weighed me down, telling me she was out there, somewhere, just waiting. There were no knocks on the door, no whispers, but her absence was a different kind of terror. I kept seeing her face, the veil, that empty smile, all in my head. I was exhausted, shaking non-stop, my whole body aching from the fright. I just wanted the day to come, But wondering what she'd do next was what really killed me. I was trapped there, in the dark, with my own fear. Huddled in the bathroom, I waited for the nightmare from the cemetery to disappear with the night. Every creak or sound outside made me jump, like she was there, invisible, waiting for me. With the gray light of dawn coming through the tiny window and the power back on, the house seemed empty, but her presence hung heavy, pressing down on me. The hours dragged on, an eternity of darkness and so much fear, and all I heard was my heart beating. The faint sunlight brought a small relief, but I really felt it. The house lights flickered and came back on, a jolt, but also a sign that the world was still there. I opened the door slowly, with a lump in my throat. The house was empty, no bride. The living room was all messed up, magazines scattered and the coffee table out of place. On the coffee table, there were cold, wickless candles, unlit, like they'd been dug up. The smell of old funeral flowers and damp earth clung to everything. Her mark, an invasion I just couldn't clean away. I touched the icy candles. She was gone, for now. But the house and I, we weren't the same anymore. The exhaustion was deep, and the relief felt so shallow. I'd survived the night, the direct confrontation, but her mark was everywhere. The doubt that she would come back, that it wasn't over, crushed me, squeezed me tight. The trauma, real, was there, inside me, to stay. Morning came, but it didn't bring any peace. I looked at the clock. Hours were flying by, but I was stuck. It wasn't about trying to understand anymore, or finding a logical explanation. That night had broken everything. I wasn't crazy. She was real, and that was the scariest part of it all. The smell of old funeral flowers was still in the air, clinging to my clothes, to my skin. Every corner of the house seemed to watch me, to remind me of her presence. I walked slowly, like the floor could give out at any moment. The loneliness I hated so much, now it was a cruel irony, a bad joke. I wasn't alone, but nobody would believe it. I had summoned a nightmare, and it had come to stay. The trauma was a weight in my chest, a cold certainty. You know, my life would never be the same. I was awake to a reality I had created myself, and there was no going back. The house, once a safe place, had turned into a trap. Every room had an echo of her. The living room, where we used to watch TV, seemed to have that old funeral flower smell, like she had just walked through it. I walked through the halls. The walls felt colder, watching me. It wasn't my house anymore. It was her stage, her presence spreading out and suffocating me. The doubt of what she would do put me in a panic. I looked at my things, my photos. It felt like everything had lost its meaning, like the trauma had painted everything a lifeless gray. Loneliness used to be one thing, but this invasion, this certainty that I wasn't alone, but completely trapped, was much worse. It was like the house had absorbed my fear, and now it was giving it back to me, much bigger. I couldn't feel safe anywhere inside anymore. Every shadow was her. Every creak was her moving. It was my prison. I just wanted someone. I made that dumb mistake at Whispering Pines Cemetery, looking for love to get me out of being so lonely. She appeared in my dreams, beautiful, perfect, a sign. Now she's here, and the house has turned into hell. The silence consumes me, and the idea of not being alone is what scares me the most. The silence, once my safe place, had turned into terror. It's not empty. It's heavy, full of her presence that I can't see, but I can feel. Every second of quiet makes me wait for noises, whispers. My mind invents creaks, breaths. Everything turns into her breathing and her steps. It's a shapeless fear, a constant doubt. Company. That's the cruel irony. I was running from loneliness, and now I'd give anything to have it back. My loneliness was empty, but it was mine. I'm not alone, but I feel more trapped than ever. Her invasion is constant. She could be anywhere. This trauma made me hate the one thing I wanted most: someone nearby. The fear of being alone with her is bigger than anything. She's not leaving. I'm stuck in my house with my creation. It's torture, a horrible thing. I only sought love. That's why I did that madness at the cemetery, to end the loneliness. She appeared in my dreams, beautiful, seemed like the solution. But now, she's not just in dreams, she's here, in my head and house, becoming a nightmare. She moved into my mind. Not voices, but thoughts not mine, certainties from her. It's her voice, clear, calling me my groom, reminding me of the wedding promise, the cemetery, as if normal. I'm trapped. I can't stop listening. It's an invasion beyond the house, in my mind, my intimate space. The fear is constant. The doubt of what she'll do, what she'll force me to do. She promises a life together, a terrifying eternity of death and imprisonment. The trauma deepens. The loneliness I avoided became this forced, terrifying company. She won't leave, and her voice in my head is the proof. Her voice in my head wasn't just a sound. It was a hammering, breaking who I was, piece by piece. She called me my groom, and each time she said it, a piece of me, my real self, came apart. I looked in the mirror, but didn't see myself anymore. I saw a stranger, someone she was molding, with an empty look that wasn't mine. My memories, my choices, everything seemed blurry, as if they weren't mine, or had never existed. It was an invasion beyond the house, inside my own head, my heart. The trauma was not knowing who I was anymore. If I was the guy who did the ritual, or the groom she invented. The fear was completely losing myself. The doubt was if I even existed outside her fantasy. I was turning into the shadow of what she wanted. And that was scarier than any ghost, any physical presence. The cemetery, like a rotten seed, a bad idea planted itself in my mind, dragged into my own suffering, where it all began and would end. The trauma of having invoked her was a weight crushing me. I walked, without control, to the rusty gate, to her tombstone, to the end. Her invasion wasn't just in the house or my mind, but in my life, a point of no return. I was screwed.